Did you ever watch a movie as a kid and have your parent laugh at something that you didn't get? Maybe you laughed along but weren't sure what the actual joke was.
This is awesome.
As we get older and watch movies, we have started to notice more and more adult content that's peppered throughout popular films. Whether it's an old movie reference or an innuendo, movies usually cater to multiple age groups, and Marvel movies are no exception. Today, we'll be looking at 25 things only adults notice in Marvel movies, and we'll be covering everything from dirty jokes to deeper meanings and metaphors behind films.
What do you let it lick you like that for? Gross.
Let's kick it off with the Hulk. Created by the late great Stan Lee, this mean green fighting machine first made his debut in 1962 as a comic character. If you went on a coffee date with him, he would say, "Look for a green-skinned, muscular humanoid sporting a fetching pair of ripped purple pants." If you were meeting his alter ego, Bruce Banner, however, you'd be on the lookout for a socially withdrawn physicist, probably ordering some caffeine-free beverage with a dairy alternative. There are many iterations of the Hulk on screen. You may know the Ed Norton version that came out in 2008, where Bruce Banner becomes the Hulk as a pawn in a military scheme for something called the Super Soldier Program. Or you may know the Mark Ruffalo version that appears in Iron Man 3 and multiple Avengers movies. If you're an older adult, you may have even seen Lou Ferrigno play the character in the iconic 80s TV series and recognize the significance of his cameo in the 2008 movie as a security guard. Younger fans probably wouldn't know who Lou is, but the cameo was just as special as Stan Lee's appearance in The Incredible Hulk. When Black Panther came out, it raised the bar for superhero movies. Not only was it jam-packed with some of the best action moments that we've seen in years, but it also tackled bigger issues, such as race relations in North America, and as The New Yorker puts it, it fuses the imaginary realm of the Marvel character with world history, contemporary politics, and specifically the experience of black people in the United States.
When you said you would take me to California for the first time, I thought you meant Coachella.
While a child may just see T'Challa being that all-powerful head of the nation Wakanda, an adult sees a character that's free of Western colonization. A child may see a cast of characters who are diverse, powerful, and brilliant, whereas an adult may shake their heads when they recognize that it took Marvel until 2018 to make a movie with a cast of mainly black actors. We're just hoping that by the time the children watching Black Panther grow up, movies like this will be normalized. Okay, so we all know Loki is the quick-witted trickster. He's the Asgardian god of mischief, and often enemy of his adopted brother Thor. Despite all of his tomfoolery, he's been known to be somewhat of an anti-hero.
Ensure my brother does not return.
While his humor cannot be ignored, did you ever notice how he throws down Shakespearean insults? As it turns out, director Joss Whedon has a penchant for classic literature, and thought it would sprinkle in some ancient jabs. In Avengers, after discussing how he's going to have Hawkeye off Black Widow, he calls her a mewling quim.
This is my bargain, you mewling quim.
Not familiar with the term? Fair enough. While it may seem like a funny little word, it actually is so appalling we can't even bring ourselves to give you the translation. If you look it up, that's your prerogative. We just ask that you don't start throwing it around, especially relating to women, if you catch our drift. In Captain America: The First Avenger, there is a reference that could be lost to the average viewer, but we, my friends, are anything but that. There is a line spoke by the Red Skull that goes,
"And the Führer digs for trinkets in the desert."
And to the untrained ear, it's insignificant, but it's actually a nod to Indiana Jones. So one influenced the other, but the line itself refers to the part in Indiana Jones where Hitler searches for a religious relic. When dealing with Tony Stark, you'll be certain to hear some unsavory things come flying out of his mouth.
Give me a hand, will you? Give me something.
Particularly in regards to women. Although he is a recovering playboy, he still manages to let his true colors show.
Peace means having a bigger stick than the other guy.
In Iron Man 2, Tony Stark, Pepper Potts, Justin Hammer, and Christine Everhart are having a seemingly harmless conversation at a bar when things take a turn. Hammer boasts that Everhart is doing a big spread on him in Vanity Fair, to which Pepper pipes in, "Well, she did quite a spread on Tony last year." Without missing a beat, Tony chimes in.
And she wrote a story as well.
While most people's eyes roll to the back of their heads at this line, it sure doesn't stop Tony from spreading that famous Stark love. Okay, we can all agree that Avengers: Age of Ultron doesn't rank as number 1 in our lists of Marvel movies. But there were still some funny moments that got us good.
Oh, actually, he's the boss. I just pay for everything and design everything, and
Make everyone look cooler.
Our favorite is the part when crew has some downtime and do what every superhero squad does when they have a moment to breathe. Play with their superhero tools, shed off their capes and spandex getups. The friends take turns trying to lift Thor's hammer. Again, Tony Stark chimes in with another innuendo saying,
Clint, you've had a tough week. We won't hold it against you if you can't get it up.
this public roasting of Hawkeye is truly savage. And he doesn't even have a comeback.
Still don't know how you do it.
Another reference that would be lost to the young is the connection between Avengers and the movie Point Break.
Hey, you're a real Blue Flame special, aren't you, son? Young, dumb, and full of... I know.
For you youngsters who aren't familiar, we'll fill you in. Point Break came out in 1991 and was about an undercover cop who was trying to find out the identities of a group of high-level bank robbers.
Definitely.
The film's title refers to the surfing term where a wave breaks as it hits a point of land, and it starred actors Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. In Avengers, Tony Stark refers to Thor as Point Break.
No hard feelings, Point Break. You got a mean swing.
The reason why this is significant is that Patrick Swayze played Bodhi in the film, and the two of them share a resemblance.
Good catch.
In Thor Ragnarok, Thor can't get the Quinjet to activate, and by saying Point Break, it suddenly starts the system.
Damn you, Stark. Point Break.
Welcome, Point Break.
We just wish that Swayze was alive to laugh along with us.
Thank you.
This next fact, hopefully no child will get, but we're guessing the film buffs nerds out there already know, which, let's be honest, is probably at least half of you watching. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, Black Widow and Falcon join our hero to uncover a conspiracy within S.H.I.E.L.D. At a certain point in the movie, we believe that Nick Fury has died, because that's what he wants us to think.
You need to keep both eyes open.
The team visits his so-called grave and finds this biblical quote on the tombstone: "The path of the righteous man." What's funny is this is the same thing Samuel L. Jackson's character Jules Winfield says in Quentin Tarantino's classic film Pulp Fiction.
The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides.
Why we're hoping no kids get this reference is because whenever Samuel L. Jackson utters this line in the film, it is followed shortly after by him killing someone. In Guardians of the Galaxy, Gamora tells Quill that his ship is filthy, to which he says,
"Oh, she has no idea. If I had a black light, the place would look like a Jackson Pollock painting."
Okay, so first off, unless you're a kid whose parents are art dealers in the Upper East Side, chances are you don't yet know about the abstract expressionist Jackson Pollock, who is known for taking an unstretched canvas on the floor and covering it with splatters of paint. While on one hand Quill is referencing one of his Earth idols, he's also pointing to the fact that there are probably some unsavory bodily fluids that were similarly splattered throughout the ship that frankly, we don't want to know about.
You got issues, Quill.
It's often the case that younger generations watch a movie and see a moment that they think is original but is actually a nod to another movie moment that they are not familiar with.
Does this song sound familiar to you?
This may be the case in Spider-Man: Homecoming. In it, a reference is made from Risky Business, the classic comedy starring Tom Cruise. While you may not have seen the movie, odds are you recognize more than you think. Does the image of Tom Cruise sliding into frame in socks set to Bob Seger's old-time rock and roll ring a bell? Hugh Grant does it in Love Actually, and even Homer gives it a try in an episode of The Simpsons. So in Spider-Man, during the montage where Aunt May is preparing Peter for his homecoming dance, Tom Holland steps in and adds to the tradition of giving Risky Business a nod by doing his version of the slide. Out of every Marvel movie, Thor takes the medal for finding more opportunities to lose his shirt than any other male lead.
You know, for a crazy homeless person, he's pretty cut.
Even more than Star Trek's Captain Kirk, who also seems more than a tad forgetful about keeping his clothes on.
Why? What is it you hope to prove?
And TBH, we're not complaining. Who doesn't want to see raw Norse god power glistening in the sun, muscles rippling? What we'd like to congratulate Marvel on is the balance they have with sexualizing both males and females. Of course, females have a dark history of being sexualized unfairly on screen, but we're glad the tables are changing a bit now. Well, it seems Chris Hemsworth is the new target, and he is being a great sport about it. Adult fans are absolutely wild for him, and are in no hurry to see him put his armor back on. This next reference we're hoping everyone got, because it has to do with Footloose, one of the greatest dance movies ever made. For those of you who are in the know, it is without a doubt Kevin Bacon's greatest performance, where he totally lets loose and cuts a rug. In the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, it is blatantly referenced by Quill when he is teaching Gamora about dancing. He says, "On my planet there's a legend about people like you. It's called Footloose, and in it, a great hero named Kevin Bacon teaches an entire city full of people with sticks up their butts that dancing is the greatest thing there is."
Who put the sticks up their butts?
If you've seen the flick, you'll know that Quill puts his moves to work and ends up saving the world with an unforgettable dance-off. When Deadpool came out, it raised the bar for what was acceptable comedy for superhero movies. Without a doubt, it had the most outwardly shocking comedy, and we were simultaneously appalled and delighted by it. One of our top picks happens in the first film, after Deadpool gets cuffed by Colossus and decided his best plan of escape is to cut his own hand off. Thankfully, he has the very handy ability to regenerate himself, so is able to regrow his lost digits. The trouble is, it takes a while and starts off looking very small, like a creepy baby. Back at his apartment, Wilson says,
I bet it feels huge in this hand.
Just one of the many adult references that make up around 90% of the film. In Marvel's debut film, Iron Man, Tony Stark is placed in a number of awkward scenarios that have us squirming. Though the character himself is without a doubt very captivating to watch, all that was momentarily forgotten during the scene where he is taking a photo with some army men in Afghanistan and says the cringe-worthy line,
I don't want to see this on your MySpace page.
MySpace. For you Gen Z and Gen Alphas watching, MySpace was a social media platform popular in 2005. This definitely dates the film, and to a younger viewer, the line would be totally lost on them. I mean, Facebook's already passé. Hearing the word MySpace induces full body chills. For those of you who don't know, Stan Lee was comic book royalty. He was responsible for co-creating superheroes like Iron Man, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Daredevil, Doctor Strange, and Ant-Man. If you can name a superhero, chances are Stan Lee had a hand in giving it life. It is MCU tradition for Lee to have a cameo in every new movie. In Avengers, he says the famous line,
Superheroes in New York, give me a break.
And in Iron Man 3, Lee portrays a beauty pageant judge. However, the first MCU cameo he made was definitely an odd choice. In Iron Man, he portrayed a knockoff Hugh Hefner.
Look great, Hef.
While it was a bit unsettling to see him in the position of the original Playboy himself, we're still happy it opened the door to some of the best cameos in movie history.
I've got so many more stories to tell.
The MCU wardrobe department sneaks in all kinds of cultural references that hold a great deal of weight. In Thor Ragnarok, when Hulk turns back into Bruce Banner, Thor gives him Tony Stark's shirt to wear, which has an image of Duran Duran on it. Fans have suggested that it could foreshadow Hulk battling with Fenris Wolf because of the band's hit song Hungry Like the Wolf. In the Avengers, Stark sports yet another band tee, but this time it's Black Sabbath. The band released a song called Iron Man about a man who travels into the future and sees the apocalypse, but claimed that they didn't know of the superhero prior to writing the song. Another metaphor that is hopefully lost on viewers is that the Netflix series Jessica Jones is just one big metaphor for abusive relationships.
She'll be my slave.
When we first started watching, we were excited to see a woman whose power was just super strength. We liked the sarcastic character and were eager to see where the show would take us. It wasn't until the evil villain Kilgrave was introduced that we felt a familiar sinking feeling in our stomach, that she was essentially running from emotional and physical abuse.
Occasionally I give a damn. And Kilgrave knows it.
While Kilgrave possesses actual mind control powers, what he is doing is not that uncommon.
Hair, the skin. Appalling sense of fashion, but that can be remedied.
He targets her low self-esteem, isolates her, and exercises psychological abuse to the point where she's dehumanized. Kilgrave also plays the victim.
I wanted you to love me.
Like most abusers, he acts as if he's the one that's being hurt, perpetuating the abuse towards Jessica. For us, it's the scariest superhero story out there. Okay, can we talk about Chris Pratt's body transformation because we're still not over it? For fans of Parks and Recreation, you met Chris Pratt playing the lovable Andy.
What does this do?
Who was just an average lovable guy who certainly didn't have a six-pack. When Pratt accepted the role as Star-Lord for Guardians of the Galaxy, everything changed. We have no idea what exercise regime he was on, but whatever it was, it worked, and we got to see the result. We obviously have to bring up the scene where the Guardians are imprisoned and get hosed down. We know for sure there had to have been at least a few single parents who came with their kids to this movie for that moment alone. Chris Pratt, if you're watching, he always is, we just want to congratulate you for all the hard work that must have gone into making yourself a personified Greek statue. Marvel loves their innuendos. If you were to take a drink every time a character used an innuendo, we swear by about halfway through any Marvel film you'd be swaying. Guardians of the Galaxy is certainly no exception. In the second film, our favorite is Nebula and her fruit. When she goes to eat a piece of fruit, everyone tells her it isn't ripe.
I'm hungry. Can we say that you're rude?
No, it's not ripe yet.
It's not ripe.
During an escape, she finally gets her yarrow fruit, and it's still not ripe.
It's not ripe.
Once decoded, we think this innuendo is saying that Nebula herself represents the fruit, and she is not yet fit for, how should we put this, adult bedroom activity. Huh. Another old-school reference in Iron Man is to the Big Lebowski. Before Jeff Bridges was Obadiah Stane, he was the dude.
Dude here.
A totally iconic character that is mistaken for a millionaire and who just wants to bowl his life away. Because it came out in 1998, chances are that not all youngins watching Iron Man will have seen the film. If you're watching and you're one of those people, please put it at the top of your list. So back to Iron Man. During the scene where we see Stane's computer screen, we get a peek at the content which shows the dialogue from the Big Lebowski. On top of that, we learn that Stane sent his weapons to a ship called the MSC Lebowski. And who can forget the callback when Stark refers to Thor as Lebowski in Endgame? Another example of some movie cross-pollination is between Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp and The Matrix. One obvious connection between the two is that actor Lawrence Fishburne is cast in both films. In Ant-Man, he plays Bill Foster, also known as Goliath, a professor who used to work alongside Hank Pym. He is able to increase size and mass to massive proportions. And of course, in The Matrix, he is Morpheus.
You think that's air you're breathing now?
Interestingly, the creators of the Matrix franchise asked that Fishburne base his performance off of a character named Goliath, but from a book by Neil Gaiman. But that's not the only connector. In Ant-Man and the Wasp, there is a scene where we see Fishburne in his class, and behind him you can spot the very formula for the Matrix math equation. Sneaky stuff. Captain America Civil War is a flurry of activity. There is so much action flying across the screen that at times it's hard to distinguish who's who in the mad rush. It's such a visual feast that you probably didn't notice a giant blue, red, and white stair car in the background. This piece of machinery is significant because it's from the set of Arrested Development.
I'm used to a car with some stairs.
The TV show that directors Anthony and Joe Russo worked on. They thought it would be a nice memento of their humble beginnings, and we have to agree. Although we would have never known if they hadn't told us. When Avengers Infinity War came out, Marvel celebrated the fact that it made around $250 million just for the opening weekend alone. Instead of basking in that glory, they instead decided to keep up their momentum and released the trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp just days after. In it, we see Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, pairs up with Hope Van Dyne, played by Evangeline Lilly, to kick some serious tiny butt. In addition, there is a conversation that happens between Ant-Man and Goliath where they discuss who is bigger.
How big did you get?
My record? 21 feet.
We're certain every adult watching this got a couple chuckles out of this, and we'll let you decide in the comments who you think wins. There were a number of things that almost ruined Age of Ultron. It always comes back to Stark. While we all know he speaks without thinking, there was a moment where he might have gone too far. Remember mid-battle when he's looking for Bruce Banner and Black Widow and says,
Romanoff, you and Banner better not be playing hide the zucchini.
For us, it totally bumped us from the viewing experience, and instead took us to an unfortunate place where we were forced to picture Hulk without his ripped pants. And frankly, we weren't amused. In our opinion, what Hulk and Black Widow do with their private time should not be brought to the battlefield. Before James Gunn directed Guardians of the Galaxy, he was responsible for giving life to a little movie called Slither. Coming out in 2006, this science fiction horror film followed an extraterrestrial parasite coming to Earth and finding its way to a town called Wheelsy in South Carolina. There it finds a host in the form of a man named Grant and takes over his body and mind, effectively controlling his entire being and further wreaking havoc on the small town. While it did horribly at the box office, it has since become a cult classic. If we were to boil it down to a sentence, we would say the movie is about the world's most invasive case of parasitic slugs. Now, how does this relate to the Guardians? Glad you asked. In the movie, Gunn features those same slugs in one of the collector's display cases. On top of that, both films star Michael Rooker. Only this time he isn't chock full of alien larvae. Thank you for joining us on this wild adventure. Is there anything that we missed? Any dirty jokes that were so under the radar that even we, the experts, didn't pick them up? Any subtle references that slipped past us? Let us know in the comments below, and we will be sure to remedy our mistake in a future video. Speaking of, make sure to subscribe in order to never miss another post by us again. See you next time.